Welcome back to the grind. We now have some information on wave 2 of the Aftermath season going into week 5, and that is going to be a new defensive rider, Dr. Zosha, and a legendary warrior, Barnov. Now, let's take a look in this video at the details of Barnov, okay? So this is a pretty cool looking kind of, I don't know, it looks like a bulky stone crystal type warrior who is, I guess, the unconquerable sea, or the ruler of the unconquerable sea. It is a legendary ice warrior, and he looks pretty interesting. Unfortunately, like most legendary warriors, I think he's going to struggle, especially at higher levels, higher tier of gameplay. But for lower level players who are still getting into the game, only taking on islands that have 1 or 2 islands of towers, then as usual, I think these dragons are still quite viable, and perhaps even for leaving at a lower tier for assault and what have you. But let's take a look at the spells, and then we'll talk a little bit about how I anticipate flying this dragon. So this, as I said, is a legendary ice warrior. And the passive for this dragon is Endless Tide, and every 5 seconds the dragon will restore 8% max HP. So this is very nice. It's not bound by a certain spell color. It's not going to be inhibited by ice flax or by stuns from a dark flak or by red mages or blue mages or whatever else it is. It's just every 5 seconds you're going to get back 8% of your max HP. And that should be modified HP. It doesn't specifically state that here, but that should be modified HP. So that's very nice. Every 5 seconds, which means once or twice per island, you're going to get back 8% of your health. Now, down in the kind of the notes below where it talks about how they recommend flying the dragon and some of the pros and cons, it actually mentions this passive not only giving health but also giving rage, but that might be a typo since I believe that would have been mentioned in the spell details. But hey, it could be a typo here or it could be a typo there. But we're going to stick with what it says here in the spells. You're getting back health every 5 seconds. So that's a very nice, you don't have to waste rage on it. You don't have to tap the button to make it work. Every 5 seconds, regardless of what's going on, you're going to get that health back. Now, the first active spell we're going to talk about is Encrust. It is a blue spell. It does cost 1 rage. It has a 4-second duration and a 3-second cooldown. And this spell is a shield. So it shields you for 100% of the dragon's max HP, which is a lot. That's a really beefy shield. And it deals 14% of the dragon's max HP as damage in an area. And I think that's going to be on cast, either on cast or on destruction of the shield. It doesn't specify, unfortunately. It's not per second damage. It looks like a one-time damage. So a little extra damage to help you burn through some tower health. And that 100% HP shield, basically that's giving you a full another life in that time span. So you can take a beating for that 4-second period, and then it will be a 3-second cooldown. So you will need to try to survive a little bit, but as we're going to see, the spells synergize quite nicely to make this work out for you, unless you're stuck by mages or by an ice flak. Now the next spell is an active white 1 rage spell with a 3-second duration and a 0-second cooldown. And that is to give Dragon's Breath attack a boost. So 250% increased damage from your breath attack for 3 seconds. And you don't have a cooldown, so you can always have this spell active. You can always have the increased breath damage if you have the rage to spend for it. And 3 seconds is a pretty decent duration, and the fact that you have no cooldown is quite nice. So if you are just about getting through this tower, you can activate it again to finish burning through it. The last spell that this dragon has is Call of the Deep. It is a white 2 rage spell with, again, a 0-second cooldown, which is nice to have that flexibility. But being 2 rage, that is quite expensive, especially with no way to get back rage immediately. This spell is going to be an important spell, not only defensively, but also to use critically and carefully with the amount of rage that you have. Because if you use this spell too many times too quickly, you'll run out of rage and you'll have nothing else that you can do for yourself. So, Call of the Deep deals 16% of Dragon's modified HP as damage to nearby towers. You don't have to target, you just activate it and it does the damage, and also freezes them for 3 seconds. So this is a good entrance to an island, especially if there's a blue mage active. You can enter and freeze all the towers, stop all the super shots, stop the mage drain, stop the shields if you're quick enough, and not have to worry about any of that for 3 seconds. While you have that frozen, you can activate Geyser to deal increased breath damage and hopefully burn through 1 or 2 towers. Ideally, you'll want to burn through a blue mage right away. That way, you will enable yourself to use Encrust, which is your massive shield to protect you from the incoming damage that is inevitably about to come. Now, if you have no blue mage on an island, then you wouldn't necessarily have to open with Call of the Deep. You could open with your shield. However, an Ice Flak could disable that, and therefore you'll be in a predicament once again. So most likely you're going to want to open with Call of the Deep, and that's going to cost you 2 rage. Once you activate that, you're going to activate Geyser to deal increased breath damage. And let's say you can get through the blue mage and part of the shielding tower or the Ice Flak. Then you're going to activate Encrust, and that is going to protect you from the damage that is coming in after that. And ideally, you will have the Ice Flak down, so you don't have to worry about the shield being disabled. That's going to give you 4 seconds of protection, and because Call of the Deep has no cooldown, as long as you still have 2 rage by the time your shield goes on cooldown, you can once again activate Call of the Deep to protect you a little bit longer. And that freeze, as we mentioned, is a 3-second freeze. And conveniently enough, Encrust, your massive shield, has a 3-second cooldown. So if you time things right, you can freeze the towers right after your shield ends. And then once the freeze effect ends, you have access to your shield once again to get that massive shield and health protection, as well as a little bit extra damage in the meantime. Now, this does seem like a rage-intensive dragon, especially if you're planning to take on a long island with the 10 towers on that long kill island. You're going to want to cycle through your spells at least twice. And that means if you're using all of those spells twice, that is a total of 8 rage, which might be a little bit much depending on how fast your rage is generating. So rage runes are going to be important for this dragon. And if we look at the runes and glyphs, it gives increased geyser duration. So that is the breath damage boost. So that is very nice. It will actually save you rage. The total increased duration that you can get is 2 seconds. So it goes from 3 seconds to 5 seconds, which is actually quite significant. And then, of course, extra HP for the dragon as well, which is scales for not only your heal, but also the damage that your spells deal. And here's the design intent. Basically, it's saying you'll likely want to enter with Call of the Deep and then use your shield to let you safely get through the remainder of the island. But if you're stuck by blue mages, you can activate Call of the Deep twice, but again, that is expensive, so you might end up getting stuck in a position where you're low on rage. But down here is where it mentions that interesting thing about the rage. It says, furthermore, Barnov's passive, Endless Tide, allows the dragon to recover meaningful amounts of health and rage between islands. Barnov is a dragon that can overcome a lot of punishment and still finish out a base. So that's where I'm a bit curious if they really do mean that the Endless Tide not only gives health every 5 seconds, but also rage. If that is the case, even if it was, say, 1 bar of rage that you get every 5 seconds, that would likely be enough to allow you enough rage to complete a cycle through a long island of towers and would actually make for a very interesting dragon kit. And I mean, this dragon has a very interesting kit. The spells seem like they work together quite nicely. The only downside, as I mentioned, is going to be that need for rage. And if you can sustain yourself enough with enough rage to continue to cycle the spells as needed and use them cautiously so you don't run out of rage, then I think this dragon has some decent potential. But again, with a defender, with a shield tower, a blue mage, an ice flak, then those are going to, or even a howitzer as well, because of the shield likely can be broken with a howitzer. All of those things in combination with a defender, especially multiple defenders, is going to make for a very difficult run But with maybe one defender, certain bases, especially undefended, I think this dragon has potential, especially at lower levels against bases that only have one or two islands of kill towers. I think this dragon has the potential to have an impact on a player's roster, especially if they are newer and don't quite have all the best current top dragons available. So let me know what your thoughts are on the spells for this dragon, on the looks of this dragon, what you think, and I hope to hear some interesting feedback, and I hope to see you in the next video.